All right, then I guess I should turn my microphone on. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome to our work session for August 2nd. We're going to jump right in and begin our interviews for the Charter Review Advisory Board, which some people are referring to as the crab. Figure out whether you want to do that or not. And so what we'll do, first of all, I do want to say we have 30 applications, and I think that is a great testament to the involvement and the interest in our community. And I just, obviously, picking 9 out of 30, there are more people who are not going to be selected than are. And I just wanted to say how grateful I certainly am. And I think I probably speak for the council that this many people have really put themselves forward to be a part of this process, especially since it's a lengthy and very detailed process. So during the course of these interviews, what we'll do is we'll invite you forward, ask you to just give a 30-second introduction. We have some questions that I believe you all received in advance. We probably won't get to every question for every applicant, but council members will ask questions, and we're going to ask you to limit your answer to about a minute. At 9 minutes, Katie's going to wave to me or say something that says last question so that we keep on task here because we do have so many interviews. So I think that's clear. And just for council members, maybe if we'll just rotate around. If you feel like I've missed you in terms of asking a question, don't be shy, please. All right. So our first applicant is well, it says Deborah here. That sounds so very formal. Deborah Salberg. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name's Debbie Salberg. I live at 539 Elizabeth Drive. I've lived there for 35 years. I have an undergraduate degree in political science with a minor in public administration. I have a master's degree in urban and regional planning. I've worked for St. Louis County Planning Department for 36 years. I am now partially retired, so I only work about 20 hours a week. Don't have to go to any night meetings. And so in answer to the last question, yes, I have plenty of time to do this. As you probably are aware, I served 2 terms on Webster Groves City Council. Prior to that, I was on the Webster Groves Plan Commission for what at the time were 2 3-year terms. I served as chairman for the last 2 years. I was on the Plan Commission. I've been on the Webster Groves Board of Adjustment both before I was elected to City Council in 2008, and I'm currently on the Board of Adjustment. I'm chairman of the Webster Groves Board of Adjustment. While I was elected as an elected official, I served on the Metropolitan St. Louis Municipal League Board of Directors for 6 years, including a year as chair of that committee for 2 years. The Municipal League has 4 subcommittees that make policy recommendations to the league as a whole. And so I was part of the Natural Resources and Urban Development subcommittee. That's pretty much all I have to say about me. So do you have any
thank
questions?
you. And so I think we'll dive in, and just so I don't forget the people on Zoom, David, would you like to start with a question?
Sure. Debbie, thanks so much for being here, and thank you very much for applying. One of the questions that I have, especially for former council members, is that there's this tenure, or at least this this notion that when I'm talking to former council members, that our city charter is perfectly fine and there's no reason to touch it. And there was a lot of angst or anxiety over the idea that we would even propose such a city charter. And so I just want to get your perspective as to whether you think that a city charter review commission is necessary, and if so, or if not, why or why not?
Well,
Can I interrupt you 1 second? Will you pull the microphone a little closer? Thank you very much.
with the exception of the 2 recent charter amendments that were voted on. The last time the charter's been looked at was 2000, 1999, around there. And I believe that that there's issues such as form of government, political representation, as well as organization of the city that are all worthy of discussion, and more importantly, to get additional input. I'm not seeing anything in the charter that jumps out at me as being particularly problematic, but that doesn't mean that it's not appropriate to have a lengthy discussion about what are other options or how we could make it better.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Sarah?
Thanks so much. And thanks, Debbie, again for being here. Why would you personally really like to be on this advisory board?
Well, as you heard from my introduction, I have a long-term investment with the city of Webster Groves as a resident, a former elected official, and a volunteer. And I want to be part of the discussion on this very important issue for the city as we move forward.
Thank you. Emerson?
Yes, Debbie, can you briefly tell us what's your approach in working in teams?
Well, I try to come prepared and informed about the issue before the meeting. I think it's very important to listen to other people's point of view. Everybody's ideas are important, and to ask them questions to try to find out why they feel or why they think their opinions, and then work with the other members on the team to try to build consensus, so that if we can, talk, if it's wording, if it's a different approach, all those are important in working with a committee or with a team.
Okay, so quick follow-up question. So in the event that there is a discussion on an item and maybe your input is not the input of choice, you're willing to yield over to that and work with the team?
I think so. I mean, I certainly do it in my job, where we make recommendations about zoning and other decisions to the county planning commission, and even to the director. And if they don't agree with me, it's like, okay, that's fine. We'll just, we move on. I mean, I'm not always the decision-making person, and I've been that for a long time in my personal career. So I understand about, you do your best and try to make your case. And if it isn't what is decided on, you just move on.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie, again, thank you. It's good to see you tonight. What core values will you bring with you to this process? Can you identify 3 and describe
Well,
why?
I think that the first one is integrity and honesty. To try to do the right thing in an honest, fair, and responsible way. Another core value I bring is respect for the organization. This includes the historic achievements of the city of Webster Groves, as well as the shortfalls that can be identified and might need to be addressed. And then I think that as something that I've always felt in my years of service is the responsibility to all decisions, that decisions will be for the good of the entire community, and they need to be weighed in the context of their impact on the community.
Karen, would you like to go next?
Yes. Can you please share with us what type of diversity, equity, and inclusion education you have participated in? Any classes or training or anything?
Most of the training that I've done has been through the county. We subscribe to the InLink learning. And so I've done a number of diversity, equity, and inclusion classes through that InLink learning. Most of these are oriented towards managers and in a working environment rather than public officials. So that's been most of my DEI training experience.
Thank you.
How could the Charter Review Advisory Board and the recommended changes it makes help support the city's diversity, inclusion, and equity values?
Well, I don't really have a good answer to that question. I don't see any issues in the charter obvious issues in the charter that need to be addressed. We've taken all the pronouns out, with the exception of, there appears to be one pronoun left in the version of the charter that's online. And I wasn't sure if it was an error from the 2000 or if they just left that, the public works director, he shall in there,
Mhm.
but I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think that the Charter Commission needs to keep diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront as they take public comment and look at the decision. But I'm not quite sure how I see the charter addressing those values. And maybe that's additional training that I need to, that I need to go through before I understood that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, clearly, we know the answer to have you read the charter because you found that pronoun
Did
in
find that
there.
pronoun.
So I'm just going to ask, is there anything else that you would, I mean, we have about a minute left. Is there anything else you would like us to know as we go through this decision-making process?
Well, I do want to say that I'm reliable. In my 8 years on city council, I missed 2 meetings, one because I had knee surgery that day and one because my a very close relative passed away. I am able to commit the time to this and the effort, and I would like your consideration to be selected. Thank you very much.
Thank you for kicking us off so nicely in these interviews. Debbie, thanks for your application.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Our next interviewee is, we're going to do on Zoom, and that is Jeannie Kirkton. We're going through a couple of our former council members. Right. So are we
We're
going to
good.
be able to see Jeannie
we
or
will
just
be. Yep,
hear
just-
Jeannie?
No,
Okay.
we'll give it 2 seconds and she'll pop up on the
Okay.
screen here and then. Kirkton. So Ms. Kirkton, you can unmute and put your camera on if you wish.
There we go.
There
Good
we
evening,
go.
everybody.
All right, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you.
Again, if you want to take 30 seconds or so, Jeannie, to introduce yourself, then we'll just start peppering you with questions.
Okay. I'm Jeannie Kirkton. I live over in Tuxedo Park. I've lived here for going over 42 years. By profession, I'm a registered nurse, a nurse anesthetist. I'm no longer practicing. I served for 2 years on the city council and 8 years in the state House of Representatives, and was term limited out of there. And since then, I've been working on several boards to keep busy. I have a daughter here, married with 2 grandchildren, and just like to ride my bike and enjoy life now. And I applied to this commission now because I have the time, and I thought my experience might be a good fit. And I think that's about it. I enjoy policy work very good. I think that you could describe me as a policy wonk.
Great, thank you very much. Emerson, how about if we start with you this time?
All right. So Jeannie, like I asked the last candidate, can you tell me your typical working environment with working in teams? Although I know you've worked with large teams up in Jefferson City. It might be a little
Yes,
different.
indeed.
But tell me how you orchestrate that working relationship in teams.
I look at teams, Emerson, kind of like a 3-legged stool, that all the team members are a supporting piece of that, and we need all of them there to get the job done. When I work in a team, I like to seek the best possible solution and outcome. I listen a lot. I speak much less. I'm very much a listener. I work for collaboration and try to get consensus on things, and I do my homework. I show up and try to maintain a sense of humor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pam, why don't we just go around this way?
Okay. Jeannie, do you have any initial thoughts on reviewing and updating the charter? Does anything stand out to you right now?
Well, Pam, I think it's a requirement and it's a good idea. I think that things change, times change, and it's a living document that we need to keep up and adapt to. My thought would be to go through the charter with a fine-tooth comb and gather input and data, listen, discuss, and then as a committee make recommendations from there. I have been toying with the idea that the Hicks-Carter-Hicks survey has given us a blueprint of things that as a city we can improve upon. And I know that other cities have probably adapted diversity, equity, and inclusion into their charters. And that's probably a reasonable thing for this commission to look at.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Karen?
What is your approach, your typical approach to when you are working with a team?
Collaboration, trying to build consensus, do a lot of listening, do a lot of research, and then coming up with results that we can all agree upon. I know we're not all going to agree on everything all the time, but to get the best possible outcome and be respectful of one another. We all come from things from different viewpoints and have different opinions, and we have to listen to those and move forward.
Thank you.
Have you already participated in diversity, equity, inclusion, education classes and training? Or if not, would you be willing to do some of that as part of the board?
I would, absolutely, but as far as formal training, I've taken one brief class that wasn't even a day long, but a lot of self-reading, self-education, but very much open to DEI instruction.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Sarah?
Sorry, I was jotting down my notes. I did appreciate your reference to the Hicks-Carter-Hicks study that was done, and wonder if you could speak maybe a little bit more about what the possible impact of charter changes might be to kind of further us toward our DE&I goals as a city.
Well, I can't give you specific answers, Sarah. I just think it's something that we need to look at as far as what other cities have done. Maybe look at model city legislation that has gone through this process. We may not even need to reinvent the wheel, but incorporate some good ideas if the commission so desires.
Representative, thank you very much for being here. One of the things that I think that you could bring to this crab or this commission would be the idea of your wide experience with the entirety of the state of Missouri, rather than just looking at local municipalities. Can you speak a little bit to the experience or the knowledge that you have as to how other communities in outstate Missouri and Kansas City operate in comparison to the local municipalities such as Webster Groves here in this region?
Well, that's a good question, David. They all have different forms of government. And as far as local government at the state level, we really didn't get into that too much, but you had people bringing their concerns from all over the state. And, big issues outstate are, of course, tax issues. They have a very, very low tax base and are seeking taxes from the state, road construction and that sort of thing that you don't see in the suburban areas. They have a whole different set of problems out there than we have here locally. But, there is a local government committee that I served on very briefly. And so, yeah, there's just so much and so little time when you're in the legislature to solve problems at a local level rather than at the state level.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Representative.
Sure. Thank you.
So one of the questions I think that you received was, what are the values that you will bring to this decision-making process? And I think we ask you for 3. If there are 3, great. If there are fewer or more, what are those values?
I think probably I would say reliability. I show up when I carry my workload, and I like to participate constructively. I think a second one would be openness, to consider varying viewpoints and have good communication. And the third one that I think is very important is inclusiveness, to seek a sense of community, to involve the community. And I always go back to this experience I had on council when I was a liaison to the library board. And at the time, the library was struggling against great opposition to expand. And I suggested that, why don't we have a focus group? And we brought people in and they said, this is what we want. And lo and behold, the library expanded. And I think when you bring people in and listen to them, and I always found that the voters in Webster Groves, if you're upfront with them and honest, that they'll, okay, I'll go along with that. So I think that sort of inclusiveness will carry a long way.
Great, thank you. We have about a minute. Is there anything else you would like us to know as we make these considerations?
Well, I just, I see this as a call to community service, and if I can be helpful, I'd be glad to participate.
Yeah, I do have one quick follow-up question. What type of qualifications, backgrounds, and expertise should the council look for in forming the commission?
Yeah,
For the board?
you know, with a 9-member commission, Emerson, that's something I struggle with. I would think that the commission would want to have members that reflect a broad base of Webster Groves citizens. I guess I would try not to have 16 or 6 nurses and 4 teachers. You try to spread it out among occupations, and just that people are very committed to getting this job done, that they really care and want to be involved.
Thank you, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you so much, Jeannie. We appreciate you applying.
Oh,
Excuse me,
sure.
Representative Kirkton. I have to
Yes.
do the formal thing.
Jeannie.
All right,
Thank you very
thanks
much.
so much.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Next, we have Robert Moody. Or I think it's actually Bob. Is that correct? Or are we, I guess we're formal tonight. So Robert. All right.
But I've been known as Bob. My brief introduction, based on what I've just listened to, when you're following highly qualified friends, these are people I've watched and participated in. I think there are 2 things I'd like you to know about me. First, the reason I applied for this is I think having a lifelong resident of this community, a village elder, as it were, could be a helpful perspective to what we're about to do. I do, in fact, remember when we last did a charter review. I do, in fact, remember when we integrated the schools. I was there. Some of that played into what I did in the future. I served on the Webster Groves School Board for 9 years, 3 years as president. I served on the Webster Groves Library Board for 3 years, and I was a member of the group that helped pick the architect and design the project and pass the levy that led to that marvelous expansion of the library. I served on the Webster Groves Theater Guild Board of Directors for 3 years, and I served several 3-year terms as an officer or committee chair at my church, including being responsible for the endowment trust. And I worked statewide through the Missouri School Boards Association as member of teams and groups with school districts across the state. Went to Washington, D.C. lobbying for Missouri. So that was an interesting experience. I think that sums up what I want you to know, where I might be coming from. And
Great.
now you have questions.
Peppering shall begin. Emily, would you like to start?
Sure, I can do that. Can you talk about some of the core values that you would bring to the charter review?
I thought about that question. There are three that I think are important. Integrity. That's the word my grandmother wrote in the front of my dictionary when she gave it to me when I graduated from Webster Groves High School. It means a lot. I've tried to practice and do that in all the jobs I've held. Secondly, experience and perspective. That came to play in all of that schoolwork that I did. And the third core value I think that's important to me, very important, is family. My family's been here a long time. I was born into this city, as was my father and my grandfather. This is my home.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Moody, what are your initial thoughts on reviewing and updating the charter? I mean, are there any things that particularly jump out to you, current issues, or do you feel that it shouldn't be touched maybe?
Well, I think first, the basic form and structure of our city seems to be pretty good to me based on my experience. But listening to what's been going on as you all have produced input for this process, it seems there are probably changes that are appropriate. And so what I would really be interested in is listening first to the council and the city and other people in the city. What is it that you think is important? And then when the 9 of us on the team sit around and talk to each other, I think that will be very important.
Mr. Moody, thank you for applying and taking the time to be here tonight. Have you participated in diversity, equity, and inclusion classes or training?
Yes, again, the schoolwork. During my time as a consultant and a project manager for multiple school districts in this county and in Illinois and in the Dakotas and in Alabama, I participated in multiple kinds of training having to do with groups and people and kinds of people. And that has played well into what I've done. And I learned in the process.
Thank you.
And thank you for the history lesson, Mr. Moody. I always kind of, it was good reading your resume.
Okay.
But I'll ask you the same question I asked the last candidate. Based on your experience here in Webster Groves, you have a longevity here and different boards you have participated in. What type of expertise and qualifications should the council look for in putting people on this board?
Well, I think some of the same things that you've heard me say already, and you've heard the first 2 interviewers say. You need to look for people who have broad experience and connections at different levels in the community. You need to have people who at least demonstrate the ability to listen and reach consensus, which is what we're going to have to do as a group after this process plays out. Consensus, if possible, is what we're after.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Moody, and thank you for applying. One of the things that I find really interesting about your resume or about your application is the fact that you have such a broad experience here in Webster Groves. Just want to know, there's a lot of things that you said that the city has done well tonight. Is there anything in particular that you think the city has done poorly or not effectively enough over your lifetime here in Webster Groves that you think, hey, the city should be doing a better job at this by now?
You mean aside from snow removal problems?
That's a fair thing to point
No,
out,
okay,
but
no,
I do think that
I'm
our
sorry.
city public would.
Truthfully, I don't have complaints. Yes, occasionally things at the city have not gone well for one reason or another. But by and large, I think we have been a responsive group of people over the years. So, I don't think things are wrong. I think things might be better. And that's the direction I would want to look. And I would want to listen to what others, maybe there is someone who's got concerns. Well, let's hear them and let's deal with it. But I don't have an axe to grind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moody.
Sarah?
Hi, Mr. Moody. Thank you again for being here tonight.
Thank
I wonder, you've spoken quite a bit about consensus and consensus building being a goal. Could you speak a little bit more about your approach to working within a diverse team?
Okay. There are four things I think they're important in the team. First, I have to listen very, very carefully. Secondly, I need to think before I react. No shooting from the hip. Third, I work collaboratively. We work together. And the fourth thing, again, is seek consensus, if possible.
So
Thank
we
you
are
very
about,
much.
sorry, Sarah, we are about out of time. So I'm going to let you, is there anything else that you'd like us to know before we make selections?
I will adjust my personal calendar to the meeting team calendar. I do have the time to do this. And although I am in my 80s, I will be here for the meeting. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank
for
you so
listening to
much.
me.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Ron Zager. Good evening.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mayor, Council, rest of the council. Those of you who know me know that sometimes I like to do things a little differently. So with your permission, I'm going to distribute some information. Can I give it?
Yeah,
to
if you want to
Peggy?
just give it to Eric, we'll pass it on down that way.
Yeah, I think there's enough for the people that aren't here as well.
Okay.
And what I want to do differently is, unfortunately, there's only 7 of you asking questions. And there are 10 wonderful questions here, which means that 3 of the questions have to be neglected. So what I'd kind of like to do, since I wrote some little notes on all 10 of these, is get through them really quickly, still leaving you time to ask questions in case there's something that I didn't do sufficiently.
All right. If that's how you want to use the
Thank you.
time, go for it.
I've applied. You've got a good job here because the expertise that's already been applying that I'm aware of, you're in good hands. But why did I apply? I've been doing community service throughout my life. As a parent, when my kids were in school, I was active PTO president, Scout troop leader, and very active in school in my job. Since retiring, I've been serving, and you saw in my resume there, I've been serving on a few boards and commissions, currently on the Webster Groves Historical Society. I've read the charter twice. The next one is really interesting, I thought. There are a couple of things that I would like to review and update. Some are very minor. For example, I don't think we need to issue bonds for insane asylums or poorhouses any longer. Boards and commissions are interesting, some of which were mentioned in the charter, others weren't. And I think that's a question that we need to ask. Should all the boards and commissions be included in the charter or not? Why the differentiation? And there's so many boards and commissions, as you full well know. Might this be an opportunity to look at merging some of them? I've been on both the Green Space and the Parks and Rec Commission, and I know that we had liaisons to each other. I was at a transportation meeting recently and heard sustainability come by and say, can we have liaisons going to each other? And if boards and commissions are liaisoning each other, maybe they could be merged. And then finally, and you'll see it in the information that I handed out, I see a little different form of government for Webster Groves. I'd like to see a mayor who is the political and governmental relations mayor, the face and the voice for the city. But I would like to see a deputy mayor also elected citywide who serves as an ombudsman for non-citizens, developers, contractors who would like to deal with the city, someone who's here who can point them in the right direction. One of the things you'll read in there, I heard a lot of complaints when I was out running for office, was that Webster Groves was not very receptive. And I think there's room to do that. The 5 remaining council members, I would like to see elected from districts, and they would be ombudsmen for their own district. If you look around, neighborhood Kirkwood is the only other city in St. Louis County, I think maybe Maryland Heights, that has all the council people elected citywide. All the others have districts or wards, and there's a reason for that. And I think we should look into that to find out what that reason is. Previous experience, you've seen some of that on there. I don't need to repeat that. My approach for working on a team is I love brainstorming. I encourage people to speak and I try to listen. And when I say that, to speak, to listen without interrupting and uncritically. Because a lot of times there are good ideas there that need to be stimulated to come forward. I myself am very detail oriented. Core values, basically respect is number 1 for me. Empathy, I try. And devotion to a cause. And this is a very good cause. Expertise that should be on the review advisory board. And this is going to really be different from what I've heard elsewise, is you're going to have plenty of expertise from what you got applying. I think it would be really good to get some diversity of opinions on there. And to do that, I don't know if any have applied, but to get people who have run for city council or mayor and lost. There's something out there in the community that needs to be heard. And what better way to hear that than getting them on board and having them work from within the system rather than from without. As for training, none specifically. However, I've been a substitute teacher in Webster Groves. This will be my 17th year. And every summer we get 4.5 hours of training. And as we get into this decade, more and more and more of that has been for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So although it's not specifically DEI, I've gotten quite a bit of that. How would we support the city's diversity, inclusion, and equity? I didn't hear any answers. I heard people say that it would be tough. It will be tough. But one way to do it is to elect a council by wards, because then you get 2 kinds of diversity. You get diversity by geographics necessarily, and you get diversity by economics. It costs less to run for office when you're running for 1/5 of the city, when you're running for the whole thing. When I ran, it cost me about 25 cents per vote. The next closest was Pam, I think. It cost her $2.25 per vote. The 2 mayoral candidates cost them over $5 per vote. So to bring this within the financial reach of more people, if we were doing that, we could do that. For time, absolutely, I have plenty. With one possible problem. Although for me, it's not a problem. I'm expecting a grandbaby in January in Portland, Maine, and I will probably be making a trip out there early in the year. Now, I hit all 10 a little bit.
Now we have
Are
2
there
minutes remaining.
Other,
So
Chase, anything that you'd like me to fill in?
I have a quick question.
Go for it.
Sure.
I mean, Ron, clearly you are a creative and independent thinker, and you talked about brainstorming. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think is the best next step after brainstorming takes place? And how would you work in a team, after having that phase taking place?
Well, it's a distillation process, meaning that then the conversation, after everybody's had their chance to speak, and then and only then react, the good, the bad, and the otherwise that we've heard from what has been said. And hopefully from what we've heard, the good ideas will rise to the top in the distillation process, and the bad ideas go by the way.
Thank you.
other questions?
Just real quick, just adding on to Pam's question, Ron. So what I'm hearing is that after brainstorming and the good ideas raised to the top, and if it's not your ideas, but you'll be willing to work with it to get the best outcome.
Absolutely, because I am capable of bad ideas in other people's estimation. And in some cases, I will hear what I think are bad ideas as well. And I'll probably say so after they've had a chance to speak them. But it's only fair. I said respect, and to me, mutual respect is the key to all of this.
Thank you.
Mr. Zager, thanks again for applying and for being here tonight. I just had a quick question. You know, one of the things that, you know, the nation is struggling with, and obviously our community, is this new era of alternative facts or fake news. And obviously it's going to be a concern throughout this CRAB experience. And so my question to you is, how can the commission and how can we as council in the city assist in ensuring that this idea of alternative news or fake news doesn't overrun the process or compel the process into an issue that it becomes so untenable?
Well, it's a matter of numbers as I see it, and that is we need more people on this board who are not putting forward fake news than are. But as I said, I think it might be good to have one or maybe two on there if we can get them to do that, because they need to hear what we're hearing, and sometimes they are not. So sometimes better information might help change them, if not change us. By the way, Mr. Franklin, as I recall, you were one of the real early proponents of having a charter review, and I'm hoping that you might be the liaison or at least share the list of suggestions that you had. I remember at a city council plan session when you were ready to present yours, and as I recall, it was rather lengthy. So I hope you haven't lost that.
I have not, trust me.
I didn't think so.
He's already sent it to me, so there's no
Oh,
worry
good.
about that. All right, thank you. I think that is our time. And so thank you very much for your
You're very welcome.
application.
Thanks,
Thank
Ron.
you.
Right. And
Thank you.
Ron.
yep, next we have Matthew Heil. I apologize. Matthew Heil.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me. I'm Matthew Heil. I'm retired from the Missouri Institute of Mental Health. I'm a research associate professor emeritus there. My research career, I was a clinical psychologist, was developing behavioral informatics. So using computers to help people provide mental health and substance abuse services. And I've been retired for about 5 years. I've lived in Webster for 30 years. My spouse and I live here over on the other side of town, and we like it. And so we're here.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Sarah, how about if we start with you?
Hey, you threw me a curveball there. Can you just tell us just briefly what your primary reasons are for wanting to be on this board?
So I've lived here, as I said, for 30 years. And in that 30 years, I have seen development proposal after development proposal go down in defeat. The last 2 attempts were to build more affordable housing by increasing housing density. There have been some reasonable concerns in these defeats. Flooding is a really great example just in the last week or so. But when I saw in the Webster Kirkwood Times the picture of the group of people celebrating the defeat of the Douglas Hill Project, they were old white people. We talk a lot about diversity, but I don't see it. And so that really irritated me. And that's the reason that I applied.
Thank you. David?
Thank you very much for being here and thank you for applying. My question pertains to like what characteristics or ideals, values do you bring to a commission of this nature, and how will you utilize those ideals or values to best to come to the best result or the best outcome?
So the core values that I have, you only asked for 3, and I could not whittle it down. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The last one is humor, though, so this fits in very well with that. But first thing is honesty. I am not willing to say anything to anybody that I won't say to the person to their face. Curiosity. I have spent my entire adult life doing research and answering questions and thinking about questions. So everything, I love learning, and I love learning new things. And I like figuring out how those new things might apply to current situations. Consensus is one of my key things as I thought about this whole process. I really believe that people, that when we come together with different ideas, we can figure together a way for everybody to get what it is that would be helpful to them and useful to them, if we can get down to what it is that they really need. And I am a stickler for measurable goals. So irritating to many people, but I demand that. So those are the qualities.
You forgot humor, didn't you?
I did say
Oh,
humor
you did?
first. That was the
Okay, all
first thing.
right. I was
I
like,
have
wait a
humor
minute.
down
It was last on my list,
But you went, okay, gotcha.
I'm flexible then, obviously, too.
Yeah, clearly. Emerson?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Howe, it appears that you've already read the charter.
I have read the charter. I have compared it line by line or section by section with the model charter. I've read parts of our neighbor communities charters. I have consulted with the editor of a textbook on community governments. So, you know, I understand, I have read it. I would say that I am newly familiar with it because I did not read it before this.
Was there anything that stuck out in our charter or from what you researched that should be in our charter?
Yes. We elect the council because we expect you guys to know more about what's going on than we do. That's really your job. And I think that one of the problems that we have is that you do not have enough flexibility or credibility. So for credibility, I would like to change the recall and override sections to make those a little more stringent in terms of how those get applied or how they would get approved. For flexibility, we have things in our charter, for example, the police and fire, which the model charter says we shouldn't have, which Kirkwood doesn't have, and we don't have it in our neighboring communities. We should move those into the rules to give you all more flexibility in what it is you're doing. There's a lot of talk on our website about diversity. That word doesn't appear in our charter. We also have no mention of sustainable development, environmental stewardship. And, you know, I've got a number of ideas, but I think someone else mentioned this earlier. The most critical thing is to listen to what we hear from the community and to get their ideas. It's really not what I think. It's what it is that we can work on together. So
Thank you.
I'm going to make an assumption, but I will just go ahead and have you answer it anyway. Have you participated in formal DEI training or education?
yeah, among other things, I'm a graduate of the 08-09 class of Leadership St. Louis.
Okay.
And we had a lot of training there. We explored the diversity of the greater metropolitan area and had specific training in DEI. Those were sobering experiences, showing me how our communities and institutions have failed our citizens, and how my own understanding of behaviors needed more thoughtful examination and change. So, but I'm not finished changing, and there's always more I can learn, and would welcome the opportunity for additional enlightenment and change.
Thank you very much.
Matthew, what type of qualifications, backgrounds, expertise would you like to see as on the members of the charter committee?
Okay. Diversity, race, economic identity, physical ability, stage of life. A willingness and ability to do a number of things, to listen, to understand. Someone mentioned that earlier. That's really important. To understand, to be able to use modern team software. So we ought to be able to use something like Slack to be able to communicate and work with one another rather than trying to deal with old email systems. To work collaboratively on solutions to meet the needs of the diverse perspectives. So I want people who are diligent, well-informed, pragmatic. I would like them to be vaccinated or masked. But those are some of the qualifications that I'd like to see.
Can you talk a little bit about working as a team and your typical approach to that?
So there's really just 3 words. So consensus, active participation, and communication.
That's 4 words.
Okay, 3 bullet points. But those are really sort of the keys. I have worked on teams my entire life. So the nature, I wrote grants, I had grant teams. So it's something that I have done since graduate school.
Great, thank you.
Well, we are almost out of time. That seems to be my usual place here. So is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before we conclude?
Yeah, one question that you didn't ask that I want to talk about is the experience I've had in groups with similar sorts of things. Well, actually, I think I'd rather work on this one. So it is how we can, as a commission, deal with the problems of equity, inclusion, and values. And first of all, there was a mention in the training session about making our own rules. And then there was a mention about, well, we would use Roberts and we would have a parliamentarian who would help us. If that's the way we go, that's really not going to be very effective. With a very large group, we want a lot of people and community things. We need to approach this by consensus. So it is critical for us because if the committee can come to consensus and make decisions via consensus rather than an up or down vote, that goes a long way to engaging the rest of the community because they too are going to believe that we understand what it is they're doing. So that's really, I think that's a critical thing for me, is the ability to work together and use consensus.
I'm going to follow up on that. So some of the way we do things because they're prescribed by state law. We don't get to make those rules. Is that prohibitive to you to work within those guardrails? Like, for example, we can't use Slack because everything that this commission does is public record.
Yep.
We don't have the ability as a city, at least I don't think we do,
Can export that.
to make that part of the public record in the way that we're at least used to doing. I'm just asking as an example.
Okay.
Even if we told you it's going to be a little bit less like your ideal, do you still feel like you want to do this?
I will be willing to compromise. Otherwise, it would be sort of stupid to be on this committee.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
We
you
really
all.
appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm really excited by the people you've interviewed. I was worried about this because you extended the deadline, but the people that you've interviewed, they sound good.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Conrad, Hebron? Which way is appropriate? Hebron, please join us up here. Welcome. So if you want to just take 30 seconds or so to introduce yourself, then we will start with the questions.
Certainly. My name is Conrad Hebron. I've lived in Webster Groves since April of this year, pretty new. Happy to be here, really like Webster Groves. Since I've been here, I've spent a lot of time reading the history of Webster Groves. I like to improve my house, and I also like to get involved where I can contribute. So that's a little about me.
Great, thank you. Emily, how about if we start with you this time? I haven't kept track of where we started, so.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit about why you applied?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, can you talk about why you've applied to the
Oh, sure.
board?
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's see. Well, it's kind of like how I mentioned earlier. I really like Webster Groves. I'm really happy to be here. It's my first house I've ever bought. I just love the neighborhood. I spent a lot years thinking about where I wanted to live. And one day I decided I wanted to live in Webster Groves, and now I've made that dream come true. But I just love this city, and I plan to stick around for a long time. And as such, interested in, of course, constant improvement and also maintenance of the great city that has already been built. And I also kind of see myself as a servant to others. That's kind of the way I approach most things I do. I like to help other people, help our society. And I think I have a special set of ambitions and skills and interests that I think would contribute positively to this group and to the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Karen?
So have you had a chance to review the charter?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what are your initial thoughts on reviewing the charter? Are there things that stick out to you? I know it's always nice to hear you love Webster Groves, but it's not a perfect place. So
Sure.
what are there some things that stick out to you that could be addressed?
Sure. And if it were a perfect place, none of us would probably be sitting here, I suppose. A few things that stuck out to me, I've reviewed the model, the National Municipal League's model charter, and I've gotten some ideas from that. I have some things that have stuck out to me. I hesitate to say if I think they should be changed or not. Quite frankly, I want to look a little bit more into that, but both into what the model says and also do a bit more of a deep dive into what the problems or the conflicts that have happened in Webster Groves in terms of legal things, maybe going through the Webster Kirkwood times, something like that. Anyway, I guess the main things that stuck out to me, or I noticed in the qualifications for the council that there's a requirement at the bottom. It states no council member shall hold any office which does or may conflict with that member's council duties. I thought that was quite broad, and I wondered if that could use some more specificity. I can't say the word. I wondered that, and then I wondered in section 2.5, the rules of order of the council, it said it shall keep a journal of its proceedings, which shall be open to public inspection. I wondered if in this day and age with the technology that we have, if we should define that more specifically as well. Perhaps maybe the last time the group met, that didn't stick out so much, but I wonder, I don't know the answer to that question. And then another section I thought was interesting was section 2.13, the council's powers. And it provides obviously a long list of what those powers are. And to me, I guess I thought one of the most important things that the charter group should probably do is probably take a deep look at each one of these powers and do an analysis of each one, compare it to best practices, again, the model standards, and see if anything needs to be added, subtracted, or modified. So I think that's a very important part. So those are a few of my ideas.
Thank you.
Conrad, what is your experience of being on other boards or commissions or any other body of people?
Sure. So in my line of work, what I do for my day job is I work in a finance department, and I work for companies, and I advise companies on their finances. And I find that although that's not titled as a board, I find that to be, from all I can tell, applicable to this type of environment, because what I'm asked to do every single day at my job is take a look at a lot of different pieces of data, and unfortunately they're all, you know, hard to find. But if they weren't, I probably wouldn't have a job. But anyhow, looking at complex data and figuring out what the story is behind that complex data, and looking at samples and standards, but realizing that with, you know, circumstances that are specific to Webster Groves or to any place, realizing that those standards don't always work perfectly, even though in most places they might. So in addition to my job where I advise C-level executives all day on what the financial health of the business is, I've also served on a couple of boards, like mostly like friends of boards, like Arch Grants. I was on the Friends board of that. Not the real board, just the Friends. Yeah, but again, every single day, my CFO, I work at a, you know, moderately sized business. I mean, you know, somewhere around $200 million per year. And I talk with him every day about the most important things related to finance. So sorry, hope that answers your question. It's very long-winded.
Thank you very much.
Nervous.
That's okay.
Conrad, my question gonna be dealing with team dynamics, and in your resume, you list yourself as a good listener. And then you make a statement: as a result, ideas are often lost when louder speaker dominates less aggressive personalities.
Yes, sir.
So working in a team environment, how could that be contained?
Well, I think it can be contained in a lot of different ways. For me, it's very important because I've been involved in groups at different times in my life where, you know, sometimes if not managed well, the loudest speaker is the one that gets heard the most. And sometimes that makes sense, but I would say most of the time not. And so for me, whenever I notice someone in the group who has a great idea, but not a very loud voice, I try my best to listen to that person, understand their point, and kind of advocate for them, because I know that unfortunately, and just how group dynamics often play out, it can be hard for everyone to be heard, but I prioritize that. And I do it through spirit and morality, but I also like to do it through organization. And I think we talked at the informational meeting about Robert Rules of Order. I think that's a great start. And also just building a culture on the team of you know, not winning points through intimidation or overpowering, but and let every idea be heard, you know, and the good ones keep being heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Hi, Conrad. Thanks so much for being here. I had wondered if you could speak a little bit about your diversity, equity, and inclusion training, any that you might have had, or your kind of openness to that as a possibility.
Totally. You know, I'm required by most corporations that I work for, and just to give a small background on that, I worked in defense industry for 5 years at Boeing, and then a couple years at another company called Leonardo DRS. I'm sorry, I went into that and I forgot your question. What was your question one more time? I'm sorry about that.
Sorry, just to speak a little bit about the training you've had in the
Right. Diversity inclusion. Sorry about that. So anyway, each year I'm kind of required to take about 3 hours of that, 3 to 5 hours of diversity and inclusion training. But that's what I'm required to do. So what I've been required to take, I have over 40 hours of corporate sponsored diversity and inclusion training. But beyond that, in my spare time, I mentioned earlier, I'm very interested in history. So I like to look at history all the time. And to me, that's a bit of diversity and inclusion training as well. That's a little more complicated to answer, but yeah, I mean, I prioritize it. Like I said, I think it goes back to the point I made earlier about when people are quieter, on the team group or minimized in some way. I'm a big proponent of being inclusive. So I just wanted to say that while I have 40 hours of corporate mandated training, I also take it very seriously, and I spend a lot of time thinking about it, quite frankly.
Thanks.
David, you're going to get the last question here.
Conrad, thanks for being here and thanks for applying.
Thank you.
What core values do you bring to the commission, and how do you plan, or how do you envision implementing or using those core values?
At the risk of sounding like a broken record here, there's a couple of values that I hold very, I guess specifically through the lens of this group. Of course, one is inclusion. And I've said that a million times, but that is so important, and it's a buzzword, and sometimes it sounds a little disingenuous when people say it. But I mean, I think really it's not only allowing people to talk, but also showing them that you value what they're saying and that you're hearing them. So I bring that value to bring I would call it fairness, equity. Want to do what's best for Webster Groves and not just what's best for myself. I want to make sure that on the group that, if it's, we're not making decisions based on what's good for us. We do make decisions for what's best for everyone. So I would say that those are some things I think about when you mention my values.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And we appreciate you applying, and I'm grateful that you're here this evening.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you
So much.
Conrad.
Thank you.
Mr. Eppers, you are next up here. All right.
Thank you.
I'm John Eppers. I live at 202 South Forest. I've been in Webster Groves I've been living here for 10 years, but I grew up in Shrewsbury. My wife grew up here in Webster Groves for basically her whole life. My in-laws been in the same house for 52 years. I ran for city council and got a lot of interest and a lot of votes, and I still want to move forward with that. I believe in unity for the community. Together we can do this. And, if we look at the charter review, one of the first things that sticks out to mind, I know the council and the mayor is all basically a volunteer position, but you all should be compensated at least double what you are for your time. That's one of the main things that sticks out right away to me. And, I'm very interested in my community. I love our community. One of the reasons why I came up here to do this is, of course, I talked to all of you when I was running, and the support y'all gave me. And one of the things with the community is, I was up here for the informational session, and some people just say they want to just do away with this. No, we do not. This is what makes Webster Groves what it is. It's our charter. Is there some things that need to be changed? Absolutely. It all needs to be reviewed. It's a little outdated. There's some verbiage in there that needs to be changed. One of the things that I would like to see is a city financial advisory board appointed to you all.
Great. David, would you like to start us off this time?
Sure, John. Thanks so much for being here. It's good to see you again. I just wanted to, you and Ron have the experience of having run for council yourselves and seeing firsthand, what citizens are saying and what citizens want, going door to door, knocking, figuring out what they want. What do you recall learning from your time running for city council as to what the citizens of Webster Groves are saying to you and what they want to see changed or enacted here in Webster Groves?
Good question, David, and thank you for that question. One of the biggest things that I see from where I'm at, I'm a blue collar worker. I'm a simple man with a simple approach, and everybody knows I'm very vocal about my garage. I want a 3-car garage. I went through the big runaround about it. And what I see out there, a lot of people want to do improvements to their houses, and they're not allowed to under our city code. One of the things that I'm super, super excited about that council is going to vote on later on is now you can actually change your windows without having to go to the architect review board. That's one of the big things that was a lot of people bringing it up. They want to update their houses, but they're restricted to. There's some porches that are falling down, and I'm super excited that they're moving forward on that. Now you can basically change your porch without going through the architect review board, which is major improvements for the whole city and involvement for the citizens and everything. What I found when I was building my garages, it was very hard to come up to City Hall and talk to somebody, get an honest answer. One guy in planning and zoning tells me, yeah, you can have a 3-car garage. Then I draw it up, get the blueprints all up there. Then they got another guy that you got to talk to before you go to the architect review board. Nope, you can't have that. And, I invite somebody to my house, come look at my house. I'm on a corner lot. I'm unique. I mean, every house is a little bit different, and you couldn't get nobody from City Hall to come out to your house and explain why I wanted a 3-car garage.
Thank you very much, John.
Sarah?
Hi, John. It's good to see you. Could you talk a little bit about your approach to working within a diverse team?
I'm open for any and all suggestions. As far as diversity training, I have not had none. I've been on my job for 35 years. I'm a machinist. I basically got out of high school. It's the 3rd job I ever had in my life. And the first job was, all 3 of my jobs been machinists. I done one through South County Tech as a job placement. My second job, I went over there, and in 1987, I started my 3rd job, and I've been there for 35 years. But I am willing for any kind of training. I mean, I feel I'm super open. I'm a problem solver where I work at. I've been there for many years. And when somebody has a problem with a part, they come wait for Johnny to come in on 3rd shift where he can fix it.
Great. Emerson?
Yes. John, good seeing you again. Tell me, what are 3 of your core values you will bring to the board?
First of all, I'm very open and I'm easy to talk to. As far as the core values, I'm honest upfront. I'm open to any ideas, and I also take some of my ideas and we think about it. Then I come up with a plan. And we need and then execute that plan.
Thank you. John, it's good to see you. What types of qualifications and background do you believe should be from the members of the board?
For the members, I think it should be diversified through all work groups. I mean, I'm the common blue collar worker, which, from my understanding, when I ran for council, I was the only blue collar worker to even seek that position in the last 30 years. I think we need people from all backgrounds, expect from within the community that's willing to work together and talk about. And you got the highly college educated people, then you got the common blue collar worker, and I think we all need to work together as a team and come up with a plan that's available and good for everybody.
John, thanks for being here. We're glad to see you here. And can you think of any ways, or have you thought about any ways how the advisory board might incorporate diversity in the city's charter? Or
I have not thought about that.
Mhm.
It's not one of my expertise. I mean, I never had to deal with it. I'm willing to take the training and do what it takes.
Thank you.
Can you talk about maybe any previous experience, maybe in the job too, of working with a group of people and coming up with a decision together, kind of like a board type of thing?
At my job, I'm the 3rd shift lead man, and I consult with the second shift and our day shift supervisor on basically a daily basis. And I take, we got some issues on the way we got to make parts, and I listen to them and take my years of expertise as a machinist, and we come up with a plan and do it together.
Great, thank you.
All right, as usual, we're getting to the end of time, so I'm
Okay.
going to give you a chance to let us, is there anything else that we should know or you'd like us to know before deciding?
Well, after I personally read the charter, went through it, a couple different times, and there's a few things that needs to be addressed to it, and I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see a financial committee appointed and to oversee some of the finances and the financial decisions y'all make.
Great, thank you so very much.
Thank you, guys.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And for our concluding interview tonight, it is Marty Dash. Is that correct pronunciation? All right. Thank you, Katie. Katie filled me in on that. So
everybody has trouble with that one.
Yeah. So if you want to just take 30 seconds, introduce yourself, and then we'll start peppering you with the questions.
Sure. I'm Marty Dash. I live at 102 Plant right around the corner. Hi, Neil.
I'm already.
I'm a lawyer. For better or for worse, whatever that means, I know, right? Who wants a lawyer on their commission?
Yeah, you're good.
That's part of this. I work right down here with Jim Under, down Law Firm, which is the building that used to be the old gas station. I guess if you've read what I filled out online, I don't know if that's an application or whatever you want to call
We
it.
can call it an application.
Yeah, I think I'm actually still on this board because I still get a pass at the aquatic center, every year. I don't think I've used it a bunch of years, but I was on the board maybe 20 years ago. And at least I think that was the last time that we constituted this board. And I served with, I was trying to remember who all I served with. And I remember some of the faces, some of the names. What I don't remember, and I hope you don't ask me those questions, is I don't remember what all issues we had at the time. I do remember though, it became somewhat, I might say cantankerous, but I distinctly remember Rob Goldson standing right here, telling the council how he didn't mean to offend them. And we're sorry that you thought that we did something that was inappropriate or unwise or whatever it may be, because all we did was meet down. No, we met right over here, I think. And we had some very innocuous conversations, but somehow it got somewhat controversial. I can't remember exactly how. And I think some of the changes that we had proposed ended up getting on a ballot. And I didn't look it up on Google to see what exactly it was, but my recollection was that they weren't anything terribly significant in the end. I think we did have some very significant conversations about some of the things that were in the charter and still are, because we only changed a few things. I know that we went through and we were charged with the council with going through and trying to make it more gender neutral. I think we changed a lot of that and some other things too, but unfortunately, I don't remember exactly what those changes were. I do remember it took us, I think we served for the better part of maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, and we had meetings at least once a month, maybe twice a month on some occasions. It turned out to be a good bit of work. As if you've ever written legislation, I know Neil's probably been involved in this a lot, or you write your mission statement at your company or corporation, you go through you antagonize over every word, right? And every comma and every semicolon, because you want to make sure you get it right. And what we did, I think we got right. I think our amendments all passed. I can't remember exactly, but I guess that's my opening statement.
All right.
I don't know what else to say.
How would you like to begin with now we get to the question time.
I don't know. I figure if I talk long enough, I won't get any questions. It'll stop me. Let's take it easy.
That's an approach. That's an approach. So you've been on it before. What made you decide to want to be on it again?
It was a good experience. At that point in time, I just moved to Webster Groves. I'd been here for maybe 3 or 4 years. I was trying to remember back how long it was. I still don't know, but I think it was right about the time my kids were born. And which that was a great experience itself. But I didn't know anybody in Webster Groves. And I moved here 25 years ago. I got to meet a lot of really smart people that were on the commission at the time. And we all got along very well. And I'm one of those law nerds, that likes digging into that kind of stuff, getting into the nitty gritty. And it is nitty gritty. Anytime you're reviewing an ordinance or a statute or the Constitution, you want to try to change that, right? I read the ballot today. It took this long to say something very simple. And you want to try to keep it simple, of course. But that's why I thought, plus I want to keep my pass at the aquatic center. If I get off the board, then I can't get back over there. That's the reason. I liked it. I liked interacting with the people. I liked the people that were on the board at the time. I know none of them are probably around again. I mean, some of them I don't think are even with us anymore, but it was a good experience. And I'd like, if I can, I'd like to repeat it. I don't know if that's possible with different people and doing different things, but that's why I applied.
Great.
And I've also been in Webster now for 25 years. At the time that I was on it the first time, I didn't know much about Webster. I may have been one of the only 9 applicants that actually applied, and that's why I got chosen. But I do know a little bit more now, and I think I might be able to contribute more than I did the last time.
So having had that experience, being new to Webster, and now you've been here for over 20 years and just more experience all around, what do you think, or what are your initial thoughts on reviewing and updating the charter? Is there anything that speaks out to you now? Because what I would, because what you said that just really stuck out to me is that a lot of the things that you looked at, there were just some innocuous changes. There just wasn't really, sounds like there really wasn't much. There was just clerical updates, changes. What type of things do you think now might need to be addressed in the charter with teeth?
I think I may have underspoken. I know that we had some the innocuous things, like I said, we have the general neutral. I do remember that, but I know we tackled some issues because I remember it being a controversial type of issue. It actually made the Webster Kirkwood Times. You know, if you go back into the archives, you'll see the Charter Review Commission stuff that we were doing. It was in there. So I don't want to minimize what we did back then, but to answer your question, when we did it 20 years ago and 21 years ago, whenever it was, we came into it and we were told to come in with open minds. And we were told to, try to be accepting of all avenues of what you can, all the avenues you could possibly take with whatever issues we were going to be asked to deal with. And we were asked to have the council tell us what they wanted reviewed. We didn't look at the charter and say, okay, let's go through the whole thing and let's pick a couple sections and try to figure out what we need to change. It wasn't like that. It was, here's what we want you to look at. Here's what we think needs to be reviewed. You guys take a look at it, review it. We're an advisory council, so that was our role, was to just give the council advice. And I kind of think, I don't know if that's the way we're rolling, this time. So I don't have any preconceived notions really of what needs to be changed in the charter right now. I don't have a long enough memory, unfortunately, to remember what I was reading back then and determine if I had ideas about what needed to be changed. My guess is if the council were to come to this board and I was on it and they asked, what do you think we should look at, or what do you think needs change this time? I'd probably have, because of the last 25 years, I think I, just by virtue of having been here, I probably would have a stronger opinion than I did 25 years ago. Hope that answered your question. I know it's kind of a roundabout, but I can tell you that I didn't review the charter before I came here today. I do remember a lot of the charter from back when we were here. And I don't have a particular agenda of what I asked the council to change. And I don't think that's our role on this board, unless the council changes what we did last time and says, okay, you guys decide what you want to look at. But I presume that isn't the purpose.
So I would like to kind of segue into that. Let's say council has no preconceived notions, and we do open it to you all to figure out how you would look at the charter and review it and suggest changes, if any. And you've already said you have strong opinions. So how do you see yourself, your strong opinion self, working with the team without any direction from council? What would your role be on the team?
Well, certainly to try to zero in quickly on I would ask everybody, again, bring it back to a lawyer's type of way of doing things. But if you're a foreman on a jury, the first thing you do when you go in and into deliberations is you kind of take a poll as to what everybody thinks about the case, and even a vote, right? If that was the charge that the council would get, I would number one, I would think there'd be somebody, and we did have this the last time. We had somebody who was kind of our official spokesperson, I guess, the chair of the board, maybe. That wasn't me. But I would think that we would go around and we would all collaborate and try to talk about our experiences here in Webster, and maybe there'll be a new person on the board. I have experiences somewhere else they could bring to, which I think would be fantastic. And find out what the concerns are and try to find those concerns in the charter. Forget about the charter for a second, find out what the concerns are, see if they're even addressed in the charter, and then address those concerns, whatever they may be. And one person obviously shouldn't dominate, that discussion, because that would just lead to a rabbit hole that goes down one way, and that's not probably what the council would be looking for.
Thank you.
So we are running short on time. So I'm going to just say, Sarah, David, and Emerson, one of you gets the last question. Who has the most burning question at the moment?
All my questions are burning.
Emerson beat you to it, guys. Nobody unmuted over there, so Emerson's got this one.
Just one quick question. So, with your expertise in being on the Charter Commission before, and knowing that the city is moving in a direction of diversity, equity, inclusion, do you believe you can take your knowledge from what you had on the previous commission and the knowledge you can bring to the current commission using diversity eye? Can you apply those principles to making changes into the charter that will benefit the diversity of our city?
Well, I think so. If I understand your question, if I'm working with a diverse group, is that what you mean? Or bringing my experiences back from what we did before and trying to translate that into some.
Well, looking at the charter, how you did it then, you got to receive specific instructions from the council. Look at this, and this.
Yes.
But if we give instructions to the board to say, we want you to look at the charter and make revisions based on diversity, equity, inclusion, can you take that principle and use best practices maybe from other cities, municipalities, and apply it to Webster Grove?
Well,
It might change the charter 100%,
understood.
but you say, well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay.
I
But that's the way this council is giving you direction to apply those principles to the charter. Can that happen?
Absolutely. I think it happened the last time. And in fact, I do remember that part of that controversy that we had was some members of the community didn't believe that we were diverse enough, our board. And I'll never forget it. And I think the guy's name was Benny Gordon. Yes, Benny Gordon. And we were getting some issues about some of the things that were coming up. We were talking about it. And there was a belief that it was very secret, and there wasn't any openness to our meetings. And we were talking about things that people weren't included on. And I'll never forget, we were I think we met in that room over there. And we were talking about it, and I'm not going to pound my own drum here, but since I'm the one being interviewed, I said, why don't we just put and Benny, I think, he would sit out here during the council sessions and voice his opinions. And I said, well, let's put Benny on our commission, and have him come and he can see for himself what we're doing and have him and put his input in. And he did. And he was great. He was a wonderful addition to the commission. And I think it helped to alleviate some of the perception that something was going on that shouldn't have been, because he was included, and he appreciated that. I think the folks that were backing him did too. And that worked. That worked well. As far as if the council says to look at this with a certain eye, and if it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's the eye that we'd look at it. I mean, that's with the charge, and that's what you do. It's like you take your orders from the council and you perform them, and then give your opinions. If the council doesn't like it, they get rid of you and hire somebody else.
I think on that note, I think we're out of time here. So
don't give a lawyer an open question.
yeah, right. Exactly. Well, thank you very much. We
Thank you for
appreciate
your
your
time,
application,
everybody.
your being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you, Marty.
David, you're another session, right? Okay. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. Why don't we go right into issues and updates? Because I know we need to talk about our traffic plan as well. So Sarah, how about if we start with you and David online?
I don't have any updates today.
Madam Mayor, the only thing I would request is maybe we could bring in MSD similar to how we brought in the ECDC, and they could answer some questions as to what they plan on doing in regards to flooding and water retention and water diversion, because obviously the extremes are happening more and more regularly in Webster Groves and throughout the community, and maybe they can help alleviate or answer some questions for the community at large.
I would support that,
Okay.
hearing from them as well.
We are going to take a few minutes in the regular meeting to talk about the last couple of weeks and flooding in response. So we can maybe talk about a little bit about that more at that point. Emerson? Oh, actually, we'll just go around. We'll go to Neil here.
I have no updates.
Okay.
Just a quick update, PCEB met and they had a very productive meeting. I think they're getting on track to making some plans to be more noticeable in the community. So we can look for some action and activities from the PCB in the near future.
BDC met last week, and as a result of the roundtable and business surveys, there was one of the topmost requests was finding employees and helping businesses find and retain employees. And so as a result, it was a brainstorm of maybe having a job board. And so staff worked on a development website for work in Webster Groves, and it will be a place where businesses can post job openings and applicants can apply. Or if you're looking for a job, you could post about yourself there as well. So the goal is to launch it in very soon, the end of next week.
Wow.
And they also discussed marketing that website and making it a really good resource for everyone and getting the word out about that. And that the ARP funds would be a good way to spend marketing dollars on that effort. And then also October 1st is business bingo, which the commission is putting together. A couple people are putting a lot of effort into that, and that will be on a Saturday. And the idea is to just go around to area businesses and have your bingo card punched. And then once you do that, you're going to be put into a raffle for prizes. And that's all I have.
Karen?
No, I have no updates.
Okay. Emily?
Green Space Advisory met yesterday. It was a great meeting. Their next event really is the Greener City tree planting on September 17th. So we have 15 residents who are participating in that, all kind of like in the like Edgar Road kind of quadrant of the city. And so these will be trees planted in the city right of way. And so if anyone wants to volunteer to help plant trees by hand, I'm sure that they would love more volunteers, but they have events they're planning for the end of this month as well, and working on something for Make a Difference Day in October as well.
Great.
Hey, Laura, could I interrupt for a sec?
Please.
Sorry, I realized we didn't meet, but I know the Old Orchard Business District would love to put out there that that the Gazebo Music Concert Series is coming up, and that will start before our next meeting. So those are gonna be on Fridays, starting August 19th at 7 o'clock in the Gazebo in Old Orchard. Sorry to not think of
that's
that
great.
at my turn.
Good to know. Katie, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Just no reports from management. We'll talk about flooding.
Okay. And Dr. Peoples, I know you're under the weather, but if there's anything you want to mention.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So as Mr. Peterson said, he'll give a flooding update during the regular meeting, but I wanted to commend all of our staff. Every single department did a terrific job without exception, and they were quick to the response. And we had staff from each department on Tuesday, the day of the flood, actively out in the field. So I know not all things were perfect, but boy, I think we couldn't have asked for a better response. So again, I want to thank each of them, and hopefully we'll have some other opportunities to do that. And then I want to thank Captain Perks and Mr. Ray ahead of their presentation. This won't be a one and done. I'm sure council will have lots of questions, but I'm really curious and excited to hear about the traffic calming and the different possibilities and where council would like to go with that. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I just have a couple of things you all have in your packet. Board and Commission Subcommittee met. You have the notes, so you can be up to date on that. I did participate in the St. Louis County Emergency Management meeting about flooding on Friday, and Mara Perry was there. Eric Peterson was there. We were well represented, and it was good. As again, we'll talk about flooding, but I agree. I want to commend staff. They have done everything they can to make sure that we helped the county move things along. The Arts Commission met this morning. Mark your calendars. October 28th is the Lifetime Achievement in the Arts celebration. And just a big thank you to the parks who have done Baroque for us twice now, concerts. And this last one was as phenomenal as the first one. And we are a community that is very lucky to have people who are willing to do those things, and also Oak Street, which it's become a community event for Oak Street. So thanks to all the Oak Street residents as well. All right, let's talk about traffic calming. This is our, I'm not skipping anything yet. No, I'm good. I'm sticking to the agenda. Mr. Reg.
And Todd, I don't think that one applicant was really complaining about snow removal.
Oh, we've had our moment. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the Webster Groves Neighborhood Traffic Management Program. This program is being incorporated at Brentwood right now. And so we're kind of modeling after Brentwood's program. So the City of Webster Groves Neighborhood Traffic Management Plan, or NTMP, is designed to foster a collaborative working relationship between the neighborhood residents, elected officials, and city staff to identify transportation concerns and to develop solutions that will improve roadway safety in Webster Groves. So the main goals of this is to increase pedestrian and bicyclist safety, reduce speeds, reduce volumes and cut through traffic, encourage motorists to use collector and arterial roads rather than local roads, deter truck traffic and other inappropriate vehicles from using those local roads. And then the evaluation criteria, traffic volumes would have to be between 1,000 and 3,000 vehicles per day. 85th percentile speed would have to be greater than 5 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. These are the things that would need to happen to be qualified for these things. Proximity to schools, documented collision patterns, either with bikes, pedestrians, or motor vehicles, and a significant number of through motor vehicles on the street through the neighborhood. So I mean, go to the next one. So the process would be that a resident has a concern, they would submit a request form to the police department, and the police department then would take it to the Traffic Advisory Commission. The TAC would then review the request, and if they deem it appropriate, then they would send it to Public Works, and then we would do our evaluation on the speed, volume, traffic volumes. We'd look at accident data, we'd look at proximity to schools and other things. If it does meet those criteria, based on our data collection, then we would recommend back to the Traffic Advisory Commission that it does qualify for approval. Then the Traffic Advisory would then send the request to City Council for you guys to make the final approval on it. Once it's finally approved, then we would purchase the items, which are considered speed cushions, and I'll show you some pictures, and we would install them. So go to the next one.
Can I ask one
Yeah,
question before
yes.
we go forward?
Sure.
Do you have the equipment you need right now to do this data collection, or will we have to acquire new things?
Well, we have traffic counters and speed counters, but we've had some issues with them.
Okay,
Police department has a speed trailer that does all the exact same stuff, so we might have to work with the police department until we get those new equipment.
great. Thank you.
Since Laura interrupted you, I'll tag on.
Tag on.
So all the criteria you listed earlier that qualifies for speed, do all of them have to be?
No, just one of those.
One of the
Yes.
groups?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll be a case by case, and we have to review everything to see what
Okay.
qualifies. Go to the next one. So this would be the form that the resident would fill out, and that would be submitted to the police department, and they take it to the Traffic Advisory. Go to the next one. And then this is what Brentwood has installed. They're called speed cushions, so it's not a speed bump, it's a speed cushion. So it's like half the height of the speed bump. And you can see there's 3 sections. So there's a gap, and that gap is wide enough A car will not fit through that gap, but a fire engine will. So if they have an emergency, they can go down the street and not have to slow down to go over the speed cushion. Car tries to split on that, they're going to hit one side or the other, and they're not going to be able to completely go over the whole thing. So I think the next are just a couple more pictures of them. There's a close up of it. And then the last one is the installation. They get bolted down. The cushions, they're about $1,000 a piece. So the total package for the 3 cushions would be about $3,700. The way Brentwood does it, they either use city funds or they look for the residents to fund it, either by donations or fundraising or whatever. So
Well, if the residents are funding it, then they still have to meet whatever those requirements are?
yes, because that's what the traffic engineers have come up with, these qualifications that are required to be met. Otherwise, you can't just willy-nilly put in speed cushions just because you want a speed cushion. Also, when they submit the petition, there has to be they have to also get a 2/3 of the residents on that street have to agree with moving forward before it can proceed to the traffic advisory. So
And does
How
the
long do
applicant-
those last?
Hmm?
I'm sorry. How long do those last?
So Brentwood's had them in for a couple of years now. They do not remove them during snow removal, which I don't agree with. But they said they raise their blades up when they get to them. So now you got a big pile of snow in the middle of the street. So what does that do to your emergency vehicles? Because I can tell you, my snow drivers are not going to stop and get out and shovel out of the little gap that's between them. So maybe we make the residents do that.
What happens if
part of their-
the snow removal truck doesn't realize that there's a hump there?
Well, that's why you have those signs. If you go back 2 pictures,
Yeah. Okay.
you got the speed hump sign there. So you know it's there.
You say you will remove those, I guess, in the wintertime or?
Well, Brentwood does not remove them. They plow around them.
I say you will though. I mean.
Well, I don't know because it's time consuming to have them installed. You got to drill to put the bolts in. You got to epoxy them down. So those bolts are going to be in there. So you'd have to cut those bolts off. Well, now you got bolts in your pavement. And then when you got to go and reinstall them, you got to drill new holes.
For every storm.
Yeah.
So
So that's why Brentwood doesn't remove them. So if somebody on the street then wants to have them removed after they're installed, it's the same petition. They have to fill out the form and have a petition signed by 2/3 of the residents saying, yeah, we want it removed.
Well, I'm just thinking about, for like you're doing snow plowing.
Mhm.
Would that cause a problem?
Well,
So
you
they
have,
crew
it's
to-
just like when you get to railroad track, you can't plow across the railroad tracks or you get stuck. The plow will get stuck into the tracks. So you have to raise your plow up when you go over that. So you're leaving that little bit of snow, especially in between those drive lanes. So
Do you happen to know, I mean, Brentwood, can you data like percentage of streets that have it or?
they
How
only
many
have,
sets
they only
they
have
put
2
up?
streets that have them right now
Okay.
that I'm aware
And
of.
how long has their program been going?
They've had it for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, I thought.
'Cause I was
I thought it
worried-
was only about 18 months old.
Because I was worried that we were going to get a run on these, and they said, oh, no, we don't get run-ons on them. He says, we've only had a handful of applications. So I'm like, okay. He says only 2 have met it so far. So
And the applicants
this
are
is
responsible.
on Pine Street.
Mm-hmm.
So where the light is, I don't know if you know where
Mhm.
Pine is in Brentwood there. So
Yeah.
if you want to drive out and take a look at them.
So it wasn't on your slide about the process, but you are suggesting that 2/3.
With the application, you
With
need
the
to have the
application
petition
being met?
signed by 2/3 of the people on the
Correct,
street.
okay.
Yep.
And where did this tell us what the qualifications are for?
Oh, it's in Brentwood's. I didn't print it out.
Oh,
So
okay.
So by 2/3 of the street, do you mean like the block or do you mean the entire street? So like, for instance, just taking East Jackson for a moment
well,
where
yeah,
I
if
live.
it's, yeah, if it's in one certain block that they want it in, it's 2/3 of the residents on that block. Yes.
All right. So my concern, so Todd, we're kind of dealing with this right now with that gentleman who is raising concerns about the concrete curbs versus the asphalt curbs. And he's indicating to me that the concrete curbs were paid for by the Villa Wood residents back 20, 25, 30 years ago. And as a result, he's saying, well, certainly one, the residents should be commended for doing that and having the foresight, but also isn't there a tax consequence to that? The fact that, every X number of years when we do the mill overlay project, they don't need new curbs because they have concrete curbs. And so therefore their tax liability should be less. And so I question the ingenuity or the responsiveness of allowing residents to pay individually per street. And also I think it raises an equity issue too, just because a street has residents willing to buck up versus another street, even though it might be more appropriate or just as appropriate on another street. So I'm not opposed to this idea. I just think that there's a lot more questions that we as a council need to answer from a policy perspective.
And I didn't understand you to say that the residents automatically pay for this. You said
No.
either
Correct.
the city could
Yeah.
pay for it.
Brentwood has paid for both of theirs.
Right.
Are there any other traffic calming measures that we could do on the residential streets aside from installing these?
There are, but they're more expensive. You could do bump outs, curb bump outs, which, when you're driving down the street, now you got to swerve. So now you have to slow down because you have to swerve.
That's typically just at corner. No, I guess they can. do
No,
that,
it's
but-
down.
Okay.
yes,
No,
right.
Euclid has.
Yeah.
Have you driven Holmes Avenue in Kirkwood?
Yes, yes.
Well, that was when I was in Kirkwood, we built that, and they have bump outs and they have an island in the middle of them.
Right.
So it doesn't deter speeding. I can
Okay.
tell you that right now. And I can't tell you how many times people have run into those curbs.
What about paint? I've seen that in other cities where they paint it so it looks like there's a bump out, but there's not really.
The 3D crosswalks.
Or even not even 3D, but just like, just paint goes in and comes back out.
Yeah.
It makes it look like the street is narrower than.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like an edge line. If you have like on the highway, you have a white edge line. You're saying make it curve in.
Yeah, like I've
Mhm.
seen them on residential streets, like, where they kind of come in at an angle and then they make it narrow for a while and they go back out at kind of intervals. So it's a little bit unpredictable.
I'd have to research that. I've never seen that done. So.
Would be cheaper.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Paint is a lot cheaper than $900 speed cushion.
So if I'm understanding the conversation, it sounds like the council is open to continuing this conversation, but there are a couple of issues that we'd like to delve into more. One is about who pays and equity issues associated with that. And then the other, how concerned are we about the snow part? I don't want us to make a decision about snow, considering it seems to snow less and less every year. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but then, workability with public works for snow removal. Am I missing a major quote policy issue, as David put it, that we need to wrestle with?
Maybe just, is there a appeal process? If someone goes through and it's deemed that they don't meet those qualifications, is there a way for them to
They
come
can
present or?
they can reapply after 6 months is what Brentwood says.
So then are we as a council ready to, ask for some more specific information on potential models for funding this? Or do
Well,
we?
and I would like to see what the conditions are for approval. I mean, if people have concerns about speeding on their street and they put in a request for this, I would like to see, you said it's on their website or something. I would like to see what those
yes,
conditions are.
It's
So-
so if you do the speed counts, it's 85th percentile, which means more than 85% of the people driving the street are going 5 miles an hour or more over the posted speed limit. That would be a qualification.
So
Or if
Todd,
there's 1,000 to 3,000 daily trips generated on that street.
so it sounded like there, 5 or 6 different things on that list.
Mhm.
And they meet one of those 5 or 6 things, then they qualify. Would you mind just providing us in writing those 5 or 6 things? Because I think that's what you're asking for,
can
is
do
that
that.
you want to see what those criteria are, just to evaluate them.
And I guess one of the questions I have is, I'm looking at my street, most of the problems we have is during the school year. When they're dropped off and they're picked up, there is no speed limit. I mean, they just drive straight through and ignore the stop signs as well. But-
Soccer moms.
Yeah. But, I'm just saying, having these speed cushions all year long, would that, especially during the snow. I mean, I stopped shoveling snow quite a while ago, so. I think I'd like to see if there are any other options or, that we can look at. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it.
So I think it's fair to say, Todd, that you and the city manager and the public safety officials have looked at what's available. And this is the most,
We've only looked at this because we were given the directive of model after Brentwood. So
and part of the reason for that is this seems to be a relatively cost-effective way to do this.
yeah, it's $3,700
Yeah.
for that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So
Madam Mayor.
just- yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So my apologies. So we were intending on presenting what those criteria were and how this might fit with the Traffic Advisory Commission as well. Again, modeling it after Brentwood's current program. It's certainly not the only option out there, but it was one from a neighboring city that seems to work fairly well. So we will provide the additional information, most likely through an email, so you can see what that criteria is, as well as how it works through their commissions, and then how those recommendations are made, and then moving up through council is how those happen.
Great. So and then I think the only other thing that was not mentioned there, Dr. Peoples, is, I guess it's a policy question about how do we fund this? If we fund it, how much money? If we decide city is going to pay for it, how much money would we like to set aside for that? So that would be the other unresolved issue right now.
Absolutely.
But are we as a council ready to have a little more discussion of this with some more information?
Mhm. Yeah, anything to slow up speeders.
Yeah. Anything to slow up speeders is right. Thank you very
I will,
much. Todd.
I will send it all to Dr. Peoples and she can send it out. to you
That
guys.
would be perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. We do have a couple of potential reappointments to boards and commissions. John Ahern has served on, so these first two are the Arts Commission. John Ahern, who served since 2006, would like to be reappointed. Judith Mann, who also served since 2006, would like to be reappointed. Even if we reappoint them, there's still 2 vacancies on the commission, right? I said that correctly?
Correct.
So do we wish to reappoint?
Yes.
Got a thumbs up there? Okay, so those 2 will be reappointed. For the Board of Adjustment, Tom Waltz has served 1 term and wishes to be considered for reappointment. We'd like to reappoint.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, simple enough. Okay, we are only 10 minutes behind. Hey, what do you know? How about if we take just 5 minutes and we'll come back at 8:30 and get our regular meeting going.
Thank you.
We welcome questions, ideas, comments from persons in attendance. Members of the audience may comment only when recognized by the mayor or mayor pro tem. If the mayor's absent, I'm actually here, but thank you to Mayor Pro Tem for acting as chair last meeting. We ask the comments be limited to 3 minutes in order to complete the agenda within a reasonable time. And we're going to do remarks of visitors, I think, after our public hearing. So if you have not filled out a speaker card and you would like to speak during public comments, please do. We'll start with the roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss.
Here.
Councilmember Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander,
Here.
Councilmember Richardson,
Here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd. Here.
All right, we have a public hearing this evening on the proposed community development block grant funds for the budget year 2023. And I'd like to open that public hearing. And Director of Parks and Recreation, Scott Davis, is here to enlighten us.
Good evening, everyone. As the mayor
evening.
said, this is a public hearing to discuss Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, which is a national program administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. I'd like to start by handing out a sign-in sheet and ask all of our residents that are in attendance to fill the sheet out so we can submit it as part of our application, receive those grant funds. And we'll also take a screenshot of Zoom meeting attendees and include those as well.
Here, I'll do that. I'll do that.
There's also a handout on that clipboard for this public hearing. CDBG funding seeks to meet one of three national objectives. One, benefit low and moderate income persons. Two, prevent or eliminate slums or blight. Three, address community development needs with particular urgency because existing conditions pose a serious and immediate threat to the health or welfare of the community. HUD provides a block of grants to St. Louis County, who disperses most of those funds to subrecipients who are municipalities and nonprofits. We've been receiving this grant from HUD through the county for many years. Tonight's public hearing is the first step in the application process for calendar year 2023. We're applying for and expect to receive the same funding as last year, $33,300. For most of the last several years, council has chosen to use all the CDBG funds in the home improvement program. Last year, we allocated $15,000 towards Ivory Crockett Park improvements, with the remaining $18,300 to the home improvement program. The home improvement program is the cornerstone program of CDBG and provides for a 5-year forgivable home improvement loans to income qualified residents that live anywhere in the city of Webster Groves. This portion of the program is administered through St. Louis County's Office of Community Development, and individuals apply directly to them. I contacted county last week and this week to try to figure out how many folks we have on the wait list for those home improvement programs. The mayor's smiling at me. She always asks that question. Unfortunately, I have not received that info, so I don't have that to give to you tonight. I do know that at the end of the 2021 funding, we had 3 people that were on the wait list waiting for 2022 funds to become available. I don't know how many people have actually signed up or applied for 2022 funds, though. But as soon as I get that information, I will pass it along.
Thank you for being very proactive about that, Scott. I appreciate it.
So it's staff's recommendation that calendar year 2023 funds all be directed to the home improvement program. Although in reviewing the application process this week, I did notice that up to 15% of the grant funds, which would be $4,995, can be used towards utility assistance without prior approval from the county. And I know that was part of conversations during the ARP funding that council had to set up a senior utility assistance program. So that would be available as part of this funding too. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council or the public may have.
Thank you for this discussion. So what are the criteria for residents to get home improvements? What type of home improvements?
It's really anything that will better their home, whether it's new decks, whether it's sealing up basement cracks and flooding issues, new roofs, basically anything that will make that house a better, more livable structure. And as long as they live in the house for 5 years after that program is completed, then that $5,000 is forgiven.
Okay, now do they apply for that through the city or apply through the county?
Directly through the county's Office of Community Development.
So does the county follow up after the grant has been made and the repairs have been made?
Yeah, they take it through the whole
They
approval
manage it
process.
all. Okay.
They approve they take the applications, they talk with the homeowners, discuss the project, approve the project, and the vendors. I believe the homeowner needs to go out and get 3 quotes from vendors as part of the application process. And then the county goes back out to inspect that the work was actually done. And I believe county then actually pays directly to the vendor that up to $5,000. That's how they do it. If we apply for something, if we do improvements like at Ivory Crockett and we're purchasing, say, new playground equipment, the county would pay our $15,000 directly to the vendor, and then we would cover the remaining amount.
Other questions? All
So
right.
now we should open it to the public for comment.
And do we have any comments from the public?
Either on Zoom or in
Yeah,
person.
do we have no hands raised in Zoom? All right, then I believe you have some things to enter into the public record.
I'd ask that we admit the report of the Director of Parks and Recreation and Community Development, Scott Davis. I'd ask that any staff materials that were utilized in the preparation of that report or discussed today would also be admitted, as well as the 2023 eligibility map, the sign-in sheet, which Scott Davis has in his possession, and the ordinances of the city of Webster Groves be admitted into evidence. And then I would recommend that we close the public hearing.
Do we need to admit that screenshot you mentioned as well, or is
Yeah,
that
it's part
covered
of,
by
it's
something?
part of the report.
Okay,
Right.
great.
Mhm.
All right, I believe we can now close that public hearing and we will move on to remarks of visitors. Mr. Dave,
To do the resolution,
Yes.
excuse me?
the resolution.
Oh, we have to actually read the resolution, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what we're talking about.
Resolution 2022-34, authorizing the city manager of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri to submit on behalf of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, an application for community development funds for calendar year 2023 to St. Louis County Office of Community Development, Department of Human Services, providing for providing for specific programs to be undertaken within said city under the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended.
We need a motion to approve.
Emily, would you like to?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-34.
Second.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. All right, so resolution 2022-34 has been passed. Now, Mr. Buck, it is your turn. Sorry to get you up before it was time. We have to vote on the.
Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. This is just something that I've been thinking about for what it's worth. Consumer segmentation is a valuable process to understand and group people with similar needs and motivations. This shares, I think, a compelling way to segment the residents you serve beyond just basic demographics. The inspiration comes from the last words of the city's longstanding mission statement, a traditional yet progressive community. Both concepts, traditional and progressive, play an important role in our city, but often butt heads in direct conflict. But I strongly believe, and I've thought about this a lot, that these concepts define and divide Webster into its two biggest and most powerful resident segments by far. In simple terms, the traditionalists are deeply motivated by their need to protect and preserve the way things have been and thus resist change. Consider the A4 duplex and Douglas Hill outcomes. On the other hand, progressives are deeply motivated by their need for new ideas, positive change, and moving forward. Last April's city election results, and particularly I think with Laura, reflected this. The immediate challenge is how this difference is positively dealt with. Because when left unresolved, I think this difference is at the root of all of the city's problems and controversies. And I mean all of them. So, two big resident segments with two very different views. But at the end of the day, does our community favor and choose the needs and motivations of one segment over the next in looking ahead and shaping our future? You all will need to discuss this when you do strategic planning. I think it's going to be a big issue. Or is City Council's opportunity to make peace and help these two big segments bridge their divide and work together to create a mutually beneficial win-win future for Webster Groves that both groups can support and positively work together. Who knows? Perhaps it will result in one new united super segment called
progressive traditionalists. You never know. So thank you. Just give peace a chance. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Dave. All right.
Madam
So-
Mayor, we do have a Zoom.
Oh, please. Yes. Thank you for the reminder.
Jamie Hassmeyer, and Jamie, you can go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Well, hi, I'm Jamie Hassmeyer, and I'm speaking tonight to you in my capacity as Chair of the Sustainability Commission. We've had 2 climate catastrophes last week, which was preceded by a heat wave and a drought. This is a summer of extreme weather. I would like to thank our first responders and the city for posting resources right away in response to the flooding last week. I'd also like to thank Public Works Department for their diligent efforts in the aftermath of the flooding. The Sustainability Commission is pulling together priorities from the Sustainability Plan, Forever Webster Groves, for your consideration, and we plan to present those to you in October. Meanwhile, I would ask that the council and city leadership to consider how we can help our community right now. In my experience, folks don't talk about climate for 2 reasons. They feel they don't know enough about it to have an opinion, or they think it's divisive. What City Hall can do is dispel both of these myths by opening lines of engagement and dialogue. We must find common ground to help one another prepare for the next disaster. But more importantly, we need to understand why climate change is critical right now. First, it's important to have conversations that lower the barriers to understanding. A Climate Change 101 Zoom and/or a meeting could be held with breakout sessions for folks to have real-life dialogue about the issues or questions in a safe space. A Facebook Live chat could be scheduled to share with residents basic facts about global warming, why it impacts us here in Webster, why it's important for us to be funding sustainability efforts, and what the city is already addressing. Second, I'm not privy to all the conversations regarding the recent flooding at City Hall, but I think it's important that we take the long view and ask some hard questions. What does disaster preparedness look like for Webster Groves? What happens in a massive power outage during a heat wave? After the events of last week, what did Webster get right? Where is there room for improvement? We are in the right place at the right time to be talking about climate change and to be taking decisive action on climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any other hands raised? So we are to new business, and actually Jamie's comments are a perfect segue. We're going to take a minute under new business and talk a little bit about the city's response and the work that's been done this past week in response to the flooding. And you know, Jamie mentioned it as 2 events. I don't know. Some people are counting it as 1 continuous event. Some are counting it as 2. However you count it, it was disastrous for many, many of our families. And I spent some time knocking on doors on both North Forest and East Pacific. And one of the things that might make Jamie feel a little better is we talked a lot about climate change. I think everyone in that neighborhood recognizes that they are straight in the path of climate change. And so I'm going to turn this over to Eric for a few minutes to talk a little bit about what the city has done in these last few weeks. And then, last week, and then hopefully whatever update you can give us in terms of the county and the FEMA disaster declaration.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Eric Peterson, Assistant City Manager, and I'll ask at some point for Director Ray and Director Davis to just give us a brief update on some things as we talk through this that happened with their teams. Chief Curtis as well, if you'd like, still in the room. But I do want to highlight, I want to reiterate what Dr. Peoples said, an incredible immediate response from our team. Both Dr. Peoples and I, just by way of background, come from Arizona, a land of volcanic rock that burns very easy in the forest fires and becomes a flood prone area. And that immediate response is something we lived every day in terms of our emergency world out there. And it's something that's new here to Webster Groves, right? I mean, we don't have floods every day and every week, and there's not a rain every day that's causing these issues. But our team really stepped up immediately. And folks who had, were halfway home, turned around and came right back, on the Thursday event and such. I mean, just really a commendable job doing the things that were necessary and how our community responded. And certainly, I think we all learned some things out of this on how our community can better respond, but also the ways that we really all stepped up in some ways. So I want to highlight just a couple things before we talk about the specific event. In terms of emergency management, FEMA and SEMA, the State Emergency Management Authority, will consider this one event. These two rain events were within 72 hours. So when we talk about the flooding of July 22, they're going to be talking about Tuesday and Thursday. So this is going to be a one event threshold. The county had to achieve at least $4 million worth of damage to the public assets and individual assets as well to be able to be eligible for FEMA declarations. I have no problem saying to you that we are going to meet that threshold, given the amount of damage just alone to the transit system. You saw the Metro Rail and some of the sewage issues that were happened and just within the city and small parts of the county. So we are going to easily meet that threshold. That's important because that's how Webster Groves and our residents become eligible for those emergency management declarations that provide resources. So I just want to share with you, as we have done, and I want to again appreciate the staff. We have stepped up, and this is by no means confidential information. I think everyone on Zoom can see this. Councilmember Franklin, let me know if you can't. But we were asked to provide numbers right away to the county as they worked through this estimate. And so I just want to highlight a couple things here. You can see staff hours at $24,000, and this is everyone's rate, everyone's name. We went through and kept an itemized list. But this is 430 regular hours that the taxpayers of Webster Groves have paid for staff to be involved in both protective measures, protecting public safety, helping rescue people, but also closing down roads and debris removal. We have over 24 overtime hours in there, and we're anticipating 490 hours to help restore essentially mostly Deer Creek Park back to at least an original status or the next best thing that comes out of this event. So that's together 1,160 hours. And I just want you and the council, you and the citizens to know that that's over a half-time job at the city of Webster Groves. When we talk about hours for this 2 sets of rain in that 72 hours, that's the kind of response that's needed for a disaster like this. And we all know how much water there was. I've only been here 15 months, but I know about Suicide Hill, and water didn't make much of a hill left in Suicide Hill at Deer Creek Park. It's the big sledding hill that is there. So we also have public asset damage, and that's almost out of that 26,200, over 25,000 of that is at Deer Creek Park, as we anticipate the issues that will need to be addressed in that park. And then our equipment use, I want to be clear that we do not need to act like paupers and beg. We have, no different than if we were to sell the city of Brentwood our time and services running the street sweeper. We should not only charge our labor, but the use of our equipment as well in that, right? And so we have categorized our financial cost to the taxpayers to help respond to this on the equipment as well. So we'll provide all that and then work with FEMA and SEMA and the county OEM to really address the reimbursements for the public asset and for the restoration and the recovery out of the event. So that's some of the financial side. I just wanted to provide that so you all could see that and know what we have provided. And also, again, I want to highlight so many great things. Our fire rescue team, the help they got from other districts in providing their boat to rescue people. Our police department was amazing. I want to ask Director Ray if you would come up first and just highlight some of the great work, but also some of the challenges as we talk about some learning opportunities for a flood event like this, as we anticipate seeing more of these in potentially in coming years.
So the numbers that I've heard over those 2 days is we had 11.2 inches and we were the third highest in the St. Louis County area for rainfall. So we were hit pretty hard. So on Tuesday morning, we were out barricading off roads that were flooding. We had all of our crews out there and we're short staffed. I mean, we had 16 guys, we're down to 10. So we were running around barricading streets left and right. People are driving around our barricades into the water and the fire department has to rescue them because their cars get stranded. So we did that on Tuesday and then again Thursday afternoon. The guys were getting ready to go home and it hit again. So they all stayed and worked late, helping us to barricade off streets again, pretty much the same streets. On Wednesday, we went to North Forest and East Pacific and the streets were mud covered. And we hosed them down and got them cleaned off. And then they got covered up with mud again on Thursday. So we were back out there on Friday doing it again.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yes.
Having tried to walk down both of those streets in that mud, it's not just a simple thing that it
No.
looked bad. It was an actual
It's
hazard
a
to
slide.
anyone who was
Yes.
trying to get in and out of their houses.
Correct.
So thank you for that.
Yes. And we collected numerous mattresses that washed down in the flood areas that were wrapped around utility poles. Trash cans that washed down the street. We collected all those. They're down at our yard. We're gonna get with Waste Management to see if they can find out where they go and get them back to the proper residents. And then Waste Management was out there Monday on North Forest and saw that there was so much debris out on the curb. They said this is way too much for one guy to handle. We're going to bring a couple roll-off dumpsters. So they're bringing them out tomorrow morning. So the residents can throw all their stuff into the roll-off dumpster. When it gets full, they'll come and swap it out for another one. So
I knew there was
that'll-
some
that'll be at
residents
no
ordered
cost.
specific.
that'll be at no
Dump-
cost. And those dumpsters are $575 to rent.
Yeah,
So-
and just while we're talking about dumpsters, I do want to say a thank you to Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. They placed one at the end of East Pacific for residents to use.
Mhm.
It got hauled away today, so Waste Management coming in with theirs now is good timing because those can get filled up as well.
Yeah, it was just bad. I mean, you had to see it for yourself, you know.
So on behalf of all of us, and I did hear as I was walking around from a lot of residents that they were very grateful for the work of Public Works and the fact that everybody was really nice and really empathetic when they saw them. So
Yeah.
thank
And
you
when
to
we
your
were out
staff.
Doing it on Wednesday, they were coming out thanking us that
Yeah.
they could get in and out without having to track all the muds.
Yeah.
I will ask Director Davis if you would just address some of the issues we're seeing in Deer Creek. And also, I believe we had to clean the pool if I read the reports correct. So.
Yeah, so pool first, we've got we had so much rain, it washed a ton of our mulch out of our landscape beds into the toddler pool, which took about 24 person hours for the lifeguards to go out and clean. I actually helped for a little bit of time, about 10 minutes. I didn't do very much. I didn't do very much. But I was out there when they started and there was only one guy. So I helped him for a few minutes for my next meeting. So that toddler pool was closed for a whole day while we clean that up. Deer Creek Park was obviously hit very hard. We started on Tuesday with just documenting all the water that was down there and how fast it actually receded, which surprised me as much water that was there. We got a little bit lucky. We didn't really start our cleanup activities before the Thursday event happened too. So we didn't have to do a bunch of double work. The only thing that we had done was start the cleaning off the Deer Creek Greenway by the Marshall Avenue trailhead. So we had to do that work twice. We'll be in the park for the next probably month, maybe more, working in the wooded area to clean debris out of there, to clean trash out of there. It's not the highest priority area right now. So instead of sending staff in there for the next, 2 weeks nonstop, we'll have them go in and do some of that work, half days and such as they can. We're also hoping to get some volunteers groups to come out and help with that. A lot of that's just, random tree limbs stuck in trees. They shouldn't be, they need to be pulled out. We can probably just leave those in the woods, but they'll need to be, removed from the living tree. So they're in still good shape. Ball field will probably need to be completely renovated. That infield was silted over. So we'll need to probably remove all that silt, replace that with new infield soils. The backstop is bent and damaged. We're still trying to figure out how much of that we'll have to replace. And then I want to thank the fire department. The nearest fire hydrant to fill up to wash down the parking lots and the streets was quite a bit away from Deer Creek. So I made a call on Friday. My guys were out there power washing, which isn't very high volume, and it was taking quite a bit of time. So I called the fire department to see if they could come out and help. And
couple of their guys came out with a pumper truck and washed down our parking lot, and about an hour and a half's worth of work, they did about 12 hours of what it would have taken us. So it really was a team effort from the whole staff to get things done.
Thank
I
you.
had a question for you. If people want to volunteer or help with the cleanup, what's the best way for them to get hooked into those opportunities?
We're going to get some volunteer days or programs set up. Probably the best way, you can go on the city's website under the parks page tab, and there's a link in there to the Deer Creek Watershed Greenskeeper program. We'll run all of our park volunteer programs through that Greenskeeper program. So it does a really good job tracking. And since it's run by the Deer Creek Watershed Alliance, it'll dovetail right in very nicely with these events.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just ask Chief Curtis, I know he doesn't like when I put him on the spot like this, but our police and fire both offered some great protection, but also Chief, if you could just come up, we're going to expect to see these events again. Reiterate some of the best public safety messages about this moment. And also, again, thank you for your team and your team's efforts.
Thanks. Obviously, the fire department was a big part of the picture in our water rescues, but we had adequate staff to handle the emergencies. The biggest problem we have, and it's a message that we want to get out to the public, and that is we didn't have enough officers to put at every spot where cars shouldn't go into the water. So we'd have barricades put up, and the officers would go to a different spot, and the cars would drive around the barricades into the water. So the most important thing for people to realize is if you see standing water, please don't go around barricades, or if the barricade's not there, please don't go into it, because all it did was create another incident where we had to have an officer respond and the fire department do the water rescue. Our communications center did an excellent job. They had hundreds of calls coming in. They kept up to date with that. And as I said, the officers, we of course were stretched, but they did a good job. They were able to respond to every emergency in a timely manner, and generally be able to keep people safe. The cars that went to the water, the fire department did the water rescues. And again, they were a big part of the picture, and we certainly appreciate their help. Any questions?
No, thank you. And again, the residents I've spoken to have been very grateful to the police and the fire department for the great work that was done.
So, Madam Mayor, I just want to close. I won't make Mara Perry is with family tonight with us, but I do want to highlight that planning and development is doing a lot of work with inspection. So this is part of recovery. There's certainly floodplain rules and many federal regulations that go into all of this. And some citizens won't be happy with decisions that we really don't make any decisions here at Webster Groves, but our federal rules about floodplains and some, but with the emergency declaration, we do think resources will be available. So I want to express that our commitment and Mara's team is working hard at making sure we maximize every possibility for resources and such that does come as a result of this. So I just want to thank them, because all these homes that have been water affected need to be now inspected. And that's a lot of people in a lot of places. And some of it's not just flooding even. Councilmember Franklin, your question about the sewage district. I mean, you're dealing with, capacity issues that cause backups and such, and that's a health and sanitary issue to be addressed as well. So we have a lot of work going on. We will continue to have a lot of work going on. But the words from Sustainability Commission are well heeded. We are in a time of changing climate, and I think we can expect to see more extreme weather events, and we'll need to prepare our operations and our plan of action around policy to address these more often than we have in the past. That's my report.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the update. I will just add, I believe this is one of those times when we talk about having someone who's involved in public engagement. Jenny Starkey has pushed out a lot of information about resources available to people. If you do not subscribe to any of the city's social media, I please ask you to do so, at least check the website, because as we know more about what FEMA opens up for residents, we'll provide as much information as we can through those channels. And finally, if you know anyone who was impacted by the floods, ask them this question for me. Have you contacted 211? 211 is where the county gets information to open up a case file for you, and that will become important when FEMA springs into action. So everyone you see, have you gone to 211 yet to make that application? All right, thank you very much. We will go on now to unfinished business. Karen, would you like to call for the third reading of Bill 9188?
Yes, I would like to call for the third.
Well, we're not on that one. We're in the front, we're on this page. Bottom.
Yes, I would like to call for the third and final reading for Bill number 9188.
Second.
Bill 9188, third reading. An ordinance amending the traffic code of the city of Webster Groves by amending chapter 60, article 16, schedules, section 60.975, schedule H, parking prohibited, to create a no parking zone on the north side of Fairlawn Avenue between Oakwood Avenue and Newport Avenue.
Is there any discussion? Not, let's call for that vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss, would you like to call for the third reading of Bill 9189?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9189 and its subsequent adoption.
Do I have a
Second.
second?
Bill 9189, third reading. An ordinance amending the Code of Webster Groves, Chapter 2, Administration, by amending Section 2.010, Meetings of the Council, and Section 2.040, Order of Business, Conduct of Meetings.
Is there any discussion? All right, we'll have that vote, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith, would you call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9190?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9190.
Do I have a
Second.
Bill 9190, an ordinance permitting the subdivision of certain property at 820 Marshall Avenue and 828 Marshall Avenue.
Is there any discussion? I believe we have,
I was just going to ask, can you remind us what this is, what the background
It-
is? on
It's a
this?
plat that was being put together to form one plat. And it was passed through
Planning.
Plan Commission.
Okay.
This is,
Wait,
this
it
is,
combining two or is it separating two?
combining.
Oh, it's combining two.
and then it's separating the two. There, essentially, there's a sliver that one needs to swap from one property owner to another.
Oh, I
This was
see.
the shortest way to accomplish that task.
Thank you.
Mhm. And I believe Councilwoman Alexander, you have a motion?
Yes, I have a motion to ask microphone. Oh. Sorry. I have a motion. I would like to call for the third and final reading this evening for Bill number 9190 due to a compelling reason that the council does not meet again until September 6th.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? No, do we vote on that motion
Let's vote
first?
on that motion and then Neil can go ahead and do the second and third.
Right.
reading.
Okay.
Mhm. Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
All right, now we have the second and third reading.
Bill 9190, an ordinance permitting the subdivision of certain property at 820 Marshall Avenue and 828 Marshall Avenue.
Any discussion? Third reading, please.
Third reading. Bill 9190, third reading. An ordinance permitting the subdivision of certain property at 820 Marshall Avenue and 828 Marshall Avenue.
Discussion, let's have the vote.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson, could you call for the reading of Bill number first and second reading of Bill number 9191?
Yes, Mayor Arnold, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9191.
Second.
Bill 9191, an ordinance of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending chapter 56, Architectural Review Board by revising section 56.050, permit applications submitted to the board, including the process for administrative approval and to clarify the review process.
Is there any discussion? Okay, second reading, please.
Bill 9191, second reading. An ordinance of the city of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending chapter 56, Architectural Review Board by revising section 56.050, permit applications submitted to the board, including the process for administrative approval and to clarify the review process.
All right, thank you. Is there anything that anyone wants removed from the consent agenda? I just want to commend whoever's responsible for getting us a street sweeper for $75,000 under what was appropriated. So thank you for that very much. All right, Councilmember Franklin, could you call for the approval of the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval and adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
All right, we have made a few reappointments to boards and commissions. For the Arts Commission, John Ahern and Judith Mann have been reappointed. For the Board of Adjustment, Tom Waltz has been reappointed. We do have a brief executive closed session. I believe, Councilmember Bliss, you're on top of this one.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for executive closed session relating to attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021, open parens 1, close parens, and negotiated contract, Missouri statute 610.021, open parens 12, close parens.
Second.
She's getting so good at that.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
All right. All right, we are now in closed session. Thank you all for being with us tonight.